Good afternoon. I'm Mark Rosenberg, University Professor and Senior Fellow in the Jack Gordon Institute of Florida International University. And on behalf of FIU, Green School of International Public Affairs, the Latin American and Caribbean Center, the Jack Gordon Institute, and Pay Cargo, our community sponsor, I want to welcome you to this webinar focusing on Haiti. Very pleased that we have three specialists with us, experts, individuals who have lived and studied and who are very knowledgeable about Haiti for our conversation this afternoon. So thank you for being with us. Let me introduce them to you. First is Dr. Prospero Charles. He will speak first. He is an adjunct professor at the University of Tuskegee in Alabama, a professor at the University of Quisqueya in Haiti. He has a think tank in Washington, and he has written extensively on Haiti. Also pleased to welcome Dr. Jose Miguel Cruz, who's Director of Research at the Kimberly Green Latin American and Caribbean Center at FIU, and as well Director of the Center for the Administration of Justice at FIU. He's a fellow of the U.S. Mexican Studies Program at the University of California. He holds his PhD in political science from Vanderbilt, and he's published extensively on gangs, gang demobilization, with particular interest on Central America and the Caribbean region. And finally, Dr. Vonda Felbab Brown, who is a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. She's director of Brookings Initiative on non-state armed actors. She also is co-director of the Africa Security Program at Brookings. She received her PhD from MIT in political science. She's the author of 5 books, including one that is about ready to come out on Mexico called Narco Noir. She also is now currently working on an assessment for the U.S. Institute of Peace on gang violence in Haiti. We will have a roundtable discussion from our panelists, then we'll ask them some questions, then we'll open it to the public. We're very grateful that you're with us, and we're looking forward to a discussion that can move us down the road on some critical issues facing Haiti and inter-American affairs this afternoon. So let us begin with Prospero Charles.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Rosenberg and FIU, for the opportunity to share my perspective on gun violence and demobilization in Haiti. It is also a great pleasure to share the panel with Dr. Brown and Dr. Cruz. My aim in the next few minutes is to set the stage for the current violence crippling Haiti right now. I will take a quick dive in the historical archives to find really elements that may have predicted the current situation, while focusing mostly on policy decisions, both foreign policies and local policies in Haiti. And because of timing, I will leave my proposed step for solution for discussion in the Q&A session. So looking back, before we got to where we are right now in Haiti, Haiti was born a country constantly under threat. In 1806, for instance, just 2 years after Haiti's independence, US President Thomas Jefferson established diplomatic and economic sanctions to isolate Haiti, fearing that the success of this burgeoning nation would inspire slave revolt in the United States. It did this because the main engine of production and wealth in the US was also slavery. The United States didn't officially recognize Haiti until almost 60 years later, as slavery was being abolished in many other places. Now, go forward 21 years later, under the threat of a return to slavery, Haiti was extorted by France, the equivalent of what experts estimate in 2017 at $21 billion. The National Public Radio, NPR, called this the greatest haste in history. People had to pay for the freedom. Imagine that. Imagine an entire nation of enslaved people who already worked for free for over 300 years. having to pay additional money for the right to exist as a free people. So those form of international and global threat to Haiti existence require some form of government that either mobilize its people to go to constant war against those threats, or an administration that exploits them mercilessly to get the fund Haiti need to pay former enslavers. But Haiti leaders at that time are choosing to pay the bloody ransoms, putting Haiti in a very long path to what I call generational poverty. Then, as poverty crippled and opportunity evaded, right? So you have despair and hopelessness that settled in, and it became a situation where only the fittest survive in Haiti. All roads that lead to survival land was taken, including the dreaded public corruption path that became commonplace in government in Haiti. Well, there was no money left to build strong institutions such as the police, the army, free public schools, good healthcare system, strong family, etc. So no promising future for our younger generation of Haitians, which brings us to the bloody explosion of social unrest and criminality that we are seeing today. Abandoned and hopeless, many of our people found themselves in a state of revolt and vengeance. Revolt against a system that caused them so much pain, a system that mortgaged their future to satisfy exuberant demands not of their own. So, of course, this is not the case for all of them, right? Few of those youth came from well-to-do family, from deportees with criminal background, or just regular individuals with criminal mindset. Unfortunately, we would also have many of our politicians and business elite with exploitation and criminal mindset who found this large pool of young and frustrated young folks as bargaining for the dirty works. So in the past couple of years, politicians and business elite were able to support those frustrated criminal young folks and revenge for the services as on the main, I would say, who will do anything really to ensure the predominance of their clients. As the growing numbers and power, this criminal group formed alliance called Vivre Ensemble and became a formidable force who would now negotiate deals, open other revenue streams such as illicit drugs and kidnappings, and challenging directly and openly Haiti security force. Security force which, due to foreign policies of embargoes and sanction, practices of extortion by great empires, and let's say poor public policy choice of our many government, are unable to respond appropriately. So now we found ourselves at the mercies of others, seemingly incapable to move forward without some kind of help. It will be a disservice not talking to the help we received before. We're talking about the more than 10 United Nations mission that came back and forth under the pretext of resolving gun violence and insecurity in Haiti. I met some of those professionals, committed individuals who had consented to incredible hardship and unspeakable sacrifice to work in Haiti. Well, the fact is, after more than 20 years of UN's active involvement, Haiti is more insecure than ever. Something is not working. What is it? What's the solution? Well, in the academic world, we already know that for a solution to a social problem to be sustainable, it must be locally owned and locally led, where the participants converge the willingness and interest. So I think what I'm seeing now with the establishment of a new government, Haiti has started that process, at least from the governance side of the issue. We will need to produce probably more concrete steps as we are moving along. But hopefully, because of timing and the Q&A session, I will talk about more of those concrete steps the way I see them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to your presentation in a moment. Let us go on to Jose Miguel Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Rosenberg. Thank you to the Jack Gordon Institute for the invitation and the pleasure to participate in this panel. I'm also honored to share this with Dr. Feba Brown and Dr. Charles. Let me just make a series of remarks to start the conversation about the situation in Haiti. In order to do that, let me just start with a disclaimer and a caveat. The disclaimer is that I'm not an expert on Haitian gangs or on Haiti. I'm an expert rather on Central American gangs, on Latin American gangs. And that's for the disclaimer. And for the caveat is that my experience working on Central America has taught me that usually one thing is what you hear or you read in the media and the press, and a very different thing is what you get from doing research on the ground. So, and actually what is happening in Haiti, basically, we all know what is happening in Haiti basically from the accounts of media and the press, but we have very few accounts from academia or from systematic research in Haiti, given the conditions down there. So the first things, obviously, is that we really need to seek forms of conducting research on this issue on the ground in Haiti. I know that's it's a huge task, but that's something that obviously we have to start with. But let me just remark three points in order to talk about how to deal with the problem of gangs in Haiti. First, what we know about Haiti and the gangs in Haiti is that, for instance, in Port-au-Prince, gangs control 80% of the territory in the city, in the main city, right? And by this, and with this, they control mobilization, access to key resources, and control the population. So, in other words, gangs are effectively the governing body in many of these communities, right? They rule, right? And that's an important starting point, because as Ben Lessing and Desmond Arias have been pointing out, there is this situation in many countries in Latin America, but in Haiti is expressed even more clearly, in which we have criminal governance. We have governance by criminal groups, right, in which they effectively rule over the population, and that's a fact in the case of Haiti. The second point is that the nature of these gangs is, or the nature of the economic activity of these gangs have to do mainly with predation over the population. So these are predatory gangs over the same population but that they control. And this is important to remember, just because in many other countries in Latin America, gangs or criminal groups, even those that control territory, those might be in these other countries, not all of them are predatory against the population, right? They revolve around certain valuable commodities, right? Meaning drugs, gold, oil, in which case, if you need to control the gangs, basically you need to control, or you have to get access and control, or get the control over the commodity, right? In Haiti, because of the nature of the essential nature of these gangs being dedicated basically to extortion, kidnapping, and all these criminal activities that go against the population, basically the nature of these gangs is different, right? It's not about controlling a certain commodity or getting sort of the power over this commodity, that will be oil or drugs, but it will be to deal with these gangs that control the population. And the third point that is important to mention is that And obviously this is evident to everyone, but it has to be considered when we talk about responses, is that obviously the existing security forces are unable to contain these gangs, and even they, in many cases, they collaborate with these gangs, right? And as we know, gangs in Haiti, I mean, the leader of one of the largest federation basically was a police officer, and many of these gangs basically are coming from security forces. So that introduces an important point in terms of how we deal with them. So in order to so with these things in mind, when we talk about dealing with gangs and the mobilization in Haiti, we need to talk about political responses, right? Political responses that entail not only their individual resistance as gang members, not entail, creating spaces for these individuals to leave violence and weapons, but also to demobilize as a collective. And this is where we enter this realm or this field of disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration that traditionally has been used for armed groups, for politically motivated armed groups operating in other countries. So this is where we think we need to start thinking on how to implement a sort of DDR strategy for a context like in Haiti. I will stop here because I run out of time, but I will continue this conversation. Thank you.
As a continuation of that conversation, Dr. Cruz will ask Dr. Vonda Brown to speak.
Well, thank you very much. I am delighted that FIU is holding this conversation with such esteemed speakers. Clearly, what is going on in Haiti is a massive humanitarian crisis, massive security crisis that requires not just intense response from the newly formed Haitian government and Haitian society that is facing extraordinary economic hardship, extraordinary security hardship, but also the international community. And the response of the international community is what I will talk about in my comments, particularly focusing on the international security support mission led by Kenya that is to arrive in Haiti in the coming weeks, a deadline that has been shifted around many times. And I'll talk about what the mission can accomplish, what it likely cannot accomplish, and how that intersects with the vast expectation that the government in Haiti, or some members of the government in Haiti, I should phrase it, and members of civil society have. I'm sure that in the Q&A, we will have more conversation on that. But let me just start with several key points. What is happening with gangs in Haiti is qualitatively very different than the situation that we have with gangs in any other Latin American context. The gangs here are no longer confined to just the favelas, the poor comunas, the peripheries. While they are absolutely there, the gangs have managed to bring down a government. It is a tired old fact that tired old data points stated that they control 80% of Port-au-Prince, of the capital. They have significant influence over a much larger portion. In the months of March and April, particularly March, amidst very dramatic situation, the security forces, in combination with private security companies, struggled just to protect the presidential palace. The gangs had encircled the airport and had the capacity to take the airport. It came down to minutes whether they would or they would not. What is happening with gangs in Haiti is also qualitatively different than what happened with gangs in Haiti before. The gangs have grown enormously in power. Politicians, government officials, governments in Haiti have been using gangs for their purposes for decades. that hasn't dramatically changed despite the sanctions that the United States, Canada, and the United Nations imposed on politicians. The roots are more direct, the interactions are not so visible, but those political relations persist. But what is different is who controls power in that relationship. And the gangs have slipped the leash of the politicians for many reasons, including one being that some of the most powerful gangs have become deeply involved in drug trafficking independently of key political actors in Haiti and have access to resources, military, financial, that are unprecedented. Now, as much as the gangs are extraordinarily brutal and predatory, as we just heard, they also cultivate, at least to some extent, political capital with local population. Some of the larger gangs that have ruled in places like Cité Soleil for 2 decades have their own foundations that distribute a minimum of handouts that certainly do much less than other armed actors do in providing for local population. But nonetheless, much as they brutalize the population, they also cultivate some acceptability. So what does this mean in terms of the mission that's supposed to come to Haiti? So first of all, the mission is arriving because the security forces of Haiti, the police forces, are not capable of handling the gangs on their own. So the prior highly controversial government of Prime Minister Ariel Henry requested the international mission. It's specifically not a UN mission, although the United Nations is providing engagement with the mission. The mission is authorized by the UN, but it's specifically not the UN peacekeeping mission. But it's arriving in the context of the needs of the security challenge being far greater than Haiti has ever seen, and yet the mission is far slimmer in resources than prior iterations. So the previous highly controversial UN mission that nonetheless managed to keep a lid on the insecurity, MINUSTA, at its high point numbered some 20,000 members. The current mission will number somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. This is the maximum. The majority of the force is provided by Kenya, that is sending about 1,000 police officers to Haiti. Now, 1,000 might seem like a lot, but let's just do some basic mathematics. We don't know exactly how many gang members there are, but it's in the thousands. Recent breaks out from prison that the gangs have orchestrated released some 4,600 prisoners. There is little record as to what has happened with many of them, but certainly some joined the gangs. And we already know that some of the most potent technicians have joined the gangs. So in the March and April operations, we saw a big jump, qualitative jump in the tactical capacity of the gangs, ability to integrate drones into operations, mostly for reconnaissance, but also for tactical operations, much greater sophistication in addition to the weapons they carry. So a force of 1,000 police officers is not a force that will be deployed in these numbers every single day. So we don't yet know what the tooth-to-tail ratio of the MSS will be, but let's just imagine that the tooth-to-tail ratio is 50%. That's likely not realistic. It will likely be a smaller number. So out of 1,000 police officers from Kenya, 500 in a very, very optimistic scenario would be available for tactical policing, for action on the ground. But not all of them will be there every day. People need to rest, they need to sleep. So at any one point, one will probably have 1/3 of that tooth number present. So maybe we're looking at 150, 200 police officers. No doubt engaging, supporting the Haitian police, but it's still a very slim number. So what is the state of the Haitian police? Well, we heard from prior remarks that the police are deeply infiltrated by the gangs. The police have long used the gangs for their purposes. They still do so today, but more and more the gangs are using the police for their purposes. Officially, the number of police officers of the Haitian National Police is some 9,000 to 12,000 police officers. In reality, If at any one day there are 3,000 officers deployed across Haiti, that's a high number. So this leaves very limited physical operations that the combined forces will be able to engage in. There might be strong temptation to go for so-called high-value targeting, killing, arresting the gang leaders. There is great desire by Haitian society to see punishment, to see justice for the heinous crimes, rape, murders, brutality that the gangs have perpetrated, making just about everyone in the capital insecure whether they will return from work alive, whether they will return daily from work unharmed. But high-value targeting, the best of circumstances, will limit the ability of one gang to operate for a temporary amount of time. It's not going to undo the gangs. We have seen repeated high-value targeting by the gangs themselves. Leaders such as Tyson, Iska were killed just in the last several months, and yet the gangs have not collapsed. So there is not much that high-value targeting will generate in terms of a basic security picture, but it might change who controls what alliance, who is prominent in what gang alliance, who controls what territory. We heard about the need to demobilize gang members, absolutely. But what are the incentives for demobilization? Well, it is not likely that at least quickly, the MSS mission will be able to induce demobilization. We would need significant success in operation over sustained amount of time before the gang members have an incentive to demobilize. And this is all the more the case now that militias have emerged in Haiti. They're weak, they're disorganized, the so-called wakale, but nonetheless in areas where they operate, they have engaged in killing gang members, often through gruesome means in retaliation for the brutality that the gangs have imposed. And so the fear of the gang, of the fear by gang members of the wakale is a strong disincentive for demobilization, even should security conditions change to induce demobilization. My final comment here is about another approach, and that is negotiations. Haiti has for a long time engaged in formal and sometimes more formal negotiations with gangs. Not at the level of national dialogue for demobilization, not at the level of national peace, but politicians constantly negotiate with gangs for access to populations, for inducing populations to vote certain way, for collecting financial resources. The more territory a gang controls, the more political bargaining power they have. The sanctions that have been imposed on Haitian political leaders were supposed to sever that relationship. I do not actually believe that it happened, that the severing has taken place. What I think the sanctions have done instead is making the relationships more circuitous, less immediate, but the relationships are there. So if by some luck we see a bubble of security, perhaps because the MSSM will come with shock and awe and manage to arrest several important gang leaders, and security seems more permissive to move toward election, which is a crucial aspect of the legitimacy and the promise of the transitional presidential council that has been created, we will likely see political leaders reaching out back to the gangs for the purpose of the elections. For Haiti to have security, rule of law, and a basic change in the social contract where the state serves the people as opposed to the state being in opposition to the people, one would need to see territories being retaken from the gangs and police, law enforcement forces with legitimacy staying permanently placed in those areas. And in the scale of the mission as it is designed, with the current challenges of the Haitian police, we can see this only on a small scale. And it will take a long time of sustained effort for the small pockets of security to increase to anything encompassing the capital, let alone other parts of the country. So very brutal, very difficult situation, and no easy way out.
So, Professor Charles, no easy way out. Are you, what points of optimism would you share with us to suggest that there is a way out, even if it will be difficult?
Oh, there is a way out. I mean, that's in the nature of Haitian. Haitian always, even when the situation seems dire right now, there is still that belief. I mean, there is in the Haitian adage, there is something that say, if as long as we live, we're still hoping to wear a hat, something like that. I mean, that translate the sort of optimism. So we always said, I mean, the Haitian issue must be addressed in two ways. One is a governance, and one is police. I mean, like a military approach. The governance, this is what I think they are working right now, because as we know, there was some sort of relationship between gangs and governance, and that complicated things. As long as you have like able and willing people with different ideas, and this is what it seemed like they are building now, everybody seems to be on the same page that we need to affront the gangs. So that's a good positive step. Now, the next step is now how do we come up with that mano-military approach? But not only mano-military approach, but also there are some other approach that can probably consider maybe a softer things. So this thing is on the work. The idea of the MSS coming, we already know that's gonna be a very complicated matter comparing to the 10,000 of UN people who were there who could not even solve the issue, even when they have some success. Actually, the UN mission, when they were there, they had to call some of the group like Vivario, who were non-military, but at least, to help with the situation. So we know the MSS will come to help out, but also at the same time, we were trying to build that local capacity in Haiti. We have an army that has not been used. Well, I don't know if probably it's appropriate to say that, but this is the truth. Look at what is happening in Salvador right now, right? I mean, I know there is a lot of talk about this is not the right approach and whatever, but hey, it seems like they are solving this problem based on whatever they are applying, probably human rights issues, whatever issues. But I mean, no one can argue that apparently the military approach is not working so far. I mean, from what we can see. So Haiti, the Boakale that Wanda mentioned, that tell you there are thousands and thousands of Haitians who are willing to fight for the country, who are willing. One thing that happened when the Boakale started, the gang back up. I mean, for months, at least 2-3 months, you see some sort of semblance of security because, hey, they didn't know what was going to happen. They were, I don't know, maybe afraid. And one of the successes they had, the gang of Timacac were in the north and Pétionville. I mean, this gang is dismantled, even when a lot of those members went to other gangs. So I'm thinking, yes, we need to have a two-step approach. Governance, wonderful, but then building that local capacity with police, with army, and perhaps, with the support of the MSS. And as long as there is will, we can definitely get there. It may take a long time, but we will. I think we will.
And Jose Miguel, to what extent is the El Salvador model useful or applicable? And if not El Salvador, are there other countries out there that have had similar kinds of situations? I recognize Dr. Feldbaum-Brown points out that in Haiti, the circumstances are definitely different than during the period of MINUSTA. But are there instances out there where there are similar circumstances where demobilization has occurred in a fairly a certain period?
Yeah, let me start by saying that, well, first, I completely agree with Dr. Feldbaum-Brown about the need to, any intervention has to be enough dissuasive force, right? And this is not what we're seeing from the current sort of plan with the Kenyan forces. So any sort of intervention that pretends to sort of remove the capacity of governance from gangs has to be a force, enough strong force and dissuasive force that will, basically force gangs to comply. That's one. The other thing that's important to mention here, and that's why we need to see this as part of broader and complex plan, is that we really need any plan to bring back some kind of governance and rule of law to Haiti. We need to consider massive social investments, right? It's very little that you can do just expecting that with bringing order with a massive force. Even if we have a massive force, that will change the equation on the ground. We need what we need also is enough resources to rebuild the country in all these areas that have been abandoned, and that in some way, as Dr. Felba Brown mentioned, are being provided by the gangs, right? The gangs at the end are, as I said before, are the rulers, and they are the ones that, in some cases, in perverse ways indeed, but they provide some sort of social services, right? So we need to include that. Now, El Salvador is a clearly different case. And also what I would like to mention about the Salvadorian case is that the Salvadorian case basically is a case in which the government have decisively opted for an authoritarian response, in which no longer we can talk about rule of law in El Salvador. We're just talking about basically a sort of authoritarian order that certainly control the gangs, but in exchange for giving up, basic civil liberties and rights for the population, right? And that's something that I think sooner than later you'll see the repercussions of that approach in what happens in the next couple of years, right? So gangs haven't disappeared; they're just being contained in massive prisons that are unsustainable for the long term. And at some point, the government will have to provide some kind of responses to the population in order to avoid young people joining gangs. So that's I will stop right now. I will address in later about other success stories.
Okay, Dr. Felba, thank you. Dr. Felba Brown, let me follow up with that. Given your experience with other countries and with in global affairs, do you see those resources flowing if there were if you will, an ability to neutralize the gangs? Do you see those resources coming into the country or being generated? Where would they come from?
Well, the resource issue is an enormous challenge, and the resource issue is even to get to the if there were improvement in security. And we are currently in the paradoxical situation that the resources devoted to the security element are minuscule, and even with the very good plan and design, the minimal resources are simply going to be overwhelmed by the scale of the challenge, and that's because internally Haiti is no longer able to generate enough security force. Now, there are very many private security companies in Haiti. By some counts, they number 50,000. So perhaps there could be some integration of those resources better. I certainly believe there are opportunities to use those resources in a better way and to synchronize them with other security actors that operate. But internationally, the international community has not been willing to provide resources. The US government has not wanted to send its own forces in. That's not going to change. It has been asking Canada and Brazil to do so. Both countries have refused. The Europeans are providing some background support, but it's very minimal. Let's just imagine that somehow security improves. And most likely a security improvement at this stage would come from one gang alliance winning enough territorial control to be able to reduce the frequency of fighting with rival gang alliance, so the JPEP or J9. That doesn't eliminate all violence, because there is tremendous violence within the alliances, or tremendous instability, I should phrase it, within the alliances, and it still leaves great vulnerability of population, because as we have heard, there is significant continual predation by the gangs on local people. But we could kind of hypothesize a scenario where drug trafficking brings enough resources to a particular alliance or particular segment of an alliance that it can prevail against their rivals, establish more territorial control, and then reduce also immediate predation, because it's getting enough funding out of international illicit economies. Would that then generate international resources for the massive economic rebuilding that Haiti needs? I mean, so far we're struggling with the humanitarian resources. That's partially driven by the lack of humanitarian access under the current circumstances. So I think there is willingness and recognition to provide more resources. There is also the significant Haitian diaspora community that has tremendous resources, and hopefully would be able to overcome a legacy of using those resources for very personal, very parochial resource extraction, and to devote it to more general development. But those are all significant ifs, and the core issue here that I don't see how we will get over, it's if security improves. I don't see how we get beyond that big if right now.
I wanted to comment on that Tim Padgett, who is a reporter who's worked on Haiti for years, talked about Haiti fatigue in the international community, and I think you're speaking to that issue. And so that's something that we probably will come back to, in part because we have seen a resurgence of how shall we say, activism and pride here in the United States among among Americans of Haitian descent in particular, and a number of organizations are now coming together, led in part by the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy, to ensure that that fatigue is not pervasive. I did want to come back, however. I'm looking at some of the questions, and one of the questions relates to the question of the larger gangs and how they are being armed. And of course, the issue of arms trafficking is important because the UN reported just recently, of course, and something that we've known, that in many ways the gangs are better armed than either the national police or potentially the multinational force that is about to arrive. I wonder about that, and I wonder, Professor Charles, if you could comment on that briefly, and then I'll ask both Dr. Feldbaum-Brown and Dr. Jose Miguel Cruz to comment as we close this program.
Yes, quick things. Before I even address your question, let me just do a quick backup to address one of the comments that Dr. Cruz said in terms of civil liberty, freedom versus, and what is happening in Salvador. I would say, I mean, I've even seen that after 9/11 in the US. There is an intersection where people are willing to accept some sort of uncomfortable, way in order to get security. I mean, before we didn't know that even to go to an airplane, you have to get strip search and you cannot bring baton, etc. So even here in the US adjusts to security situation when that's security is a priority. So I think Haiti has to find a way to adjust its legal concern, human right, to the security need of the people. That is out of question. So the other thing is, and I know Dr. Brown mentioned something about the gang alliance. Gang alliance has never worked for Haiti. Actually, if anything, that gang alliance in Haiti is killing. The gang alliance is a very negative thing for Haiti right now. They call themselves vivre ensemble. Vivre ensemble is among them, not among the people. And by the way, the resources come from extortion, from killing, from kidnapping. I don't see how gang resources can help develop Haiti. And then to answer your question, Dr. Rosenberg, so you forget me. Can you just repeat the last thing that you just said about the question?
The last thing was the Haiti fatigue.
Yeah. The Haiti fatigue, to solve the Haiti fatigue, we have to build local capacity. You cannot develop a country on basing on need or on charity or on help from any other country. What we know, and Dr. Brown said it correctly, 1,000 Kenyan forces can probably help support, but they will not have that huge success that we are talking. While you have Haitian army, you have Haiti is what, probably 60% of young people. Don't we can put system in place where people from 18 to 26 go to some sort of military school. We have to find a way to build our local capacity. That's the only sustainable way. Like that, you can get away of that international fatigue. Thank you.
Thank you. Final comments, Jose Miguel?
I just want to reiterate that, that obviously the issue of gangs in Haiti is a complex one. It's a matter of governance over the territory. So I think any response have to be, a complex response, not only based on force, but also based on humanitarian assistance, investment, social investment, right? That can be sustainable throughout future, and especially with the participation of Haitians in that response.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Feldebron.
Well, I want to reiterate 2 points. One is that the suffering in Haiti is enormous. It's suffering in terms of the humanitarian crisis, with some 50% of the population food insecure, internal displacement that has hundreds of thousands of people displaced, and immense daily insecurity that people face. Many people in Haiti will not know whether they will return unharmed and alive from going to work. And even in parts of the country, like in the rural areas where the gang presence is small, there is insecurity, and what happens in the capital, around the capital, has deep economic impacts across the country. This matters obviously to Haitians, but it also matters to the international community. While the United States is not seeing people trying to arrive in boats at the scale that was the case prior, there is a significant amount of people leaving Haiti for places such as Brazil. There is just much less visibility to the fact there are significant refugee flows. So ignoring the issue will only exacerbate the conflict and the impact that it has on individuals and that it has on the international community, on neighbor states, on the United States. That said, we are not resourced to have radical changes. Radical changes are needed, but they are going to remain elusive with the resources that are internally and externally generated to the problem. So with those extremely limited, extremely inadequate resources, how can one make smaller step-by-step progress that is sustained and cumulatively over time generates considerably better outcome is really where policy focus needs to be.
Well, thank you very much. And that actually sets up a larger conversation that we expect to continue to be involved in it at Florida International University on what those steps are on one hand, but to your earlier point, the national security implications for the broader region on one hand, as well as for the United States on the other, bearing in mind that the humanitarian crisis is real, is painful, is immediate, and does require thoughtful action, but definitely action. So thank you to the three of you. Thank you to the Jack Gordon Institute, to Pay Cargo, Latin American and Caribbean Center, to the Green School of International and Public Affairs, and to our technicians who are enabling us to have this conversation. We are very grateful for your attention, and we know that we will be back with other informative conversations like this, as well that we will be engaged in trying to work with our communities to come up with impact that has benefits for the Haitian community. So thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.